The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I was sitting in my office reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with a notification from the family group chat I'd been part of for years. Hey everyone! Can't wait for Thanksgiving at Mom and Dad's this year. Sarah's bringing her famous stuffing, Tom's handling the turkey, and Lisa's got desserts covered. Should be intimate and cozy with just the immediate family. Love you all. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. I read it twice, then 3 times, waiting for my name to appear somewhere in that message. Waiting for someone to mention that I'd be bringing the cranberry sauce as I had for the past 8 years. Waiting for any acknowledgement that I existed. But there was nothing. My sister Emma had sent that message to our family group chat, a chat that included me, our parents, and our 3 siblings. She'd deliberately outlined everyone's contributions except mine, then signed off with, "just the immediate family," as if I weren't part of it. The silence that followed was deafening. No one corrected her. No one asked where I fit in. The conversation simply moved on to discussing travel arrangements and dietary restrictions, flowing around my absence like water around a stone. I set my phone down with trembling hands. After 32 years of family dinners, birthday celebrations, and holiday traditions, I had been erased with a single text message. The betrayal cut deeper because I knew exactly why this was happening. 3 months earlier, at my cousin's wedding, I'd finally stood up to Emma's husband, Derek. For years, I'd watched him belittle waitstaff, make racist jokes, and treat my sister like his personal assistant. But when he'd grabbed our teenage cousin inappropriate at the reception and laughed it off as just being friendly, I'd had enough. I'd confronted him publicly, called out his behavior, and made it clear that his actions were unacceptable. The scene had been uncomfortable, but I'd thought it was necessary. What I hadn't expected was for Emma to choose defending her husband over supporting her own sibling. The family had closed ranks around Emma and Derek. My parents, conflict-averse as always, had suggested I apologize for causing a scene. My other siblings had gone silent, unwilling to pick sides but effectively picking one through their inaction. Now, apparently, I was being punished for having principles. Over the next few days, I waited for someone, anyone, to reach out. To invite me privately, to acknowledge the obvious snub. But my phone remained silent except for the continued chatter in the group chat about menu planning and seating arrangements. By Friday, the hurt had crystallized into something harder: determination. I'd been the family's financial safety net for years. When Tom needed money for his business startup, I'd co-signed the loan and covered payments when he defaulted. When Sarah's husband lost his job, I'd quietly paid their mortgage for 6 months. When my parents' roof needed replacing after the storm, I'd written the check without hesitation. I'd never asked for recognition or gratitude. Family helped family. That had always been my philosophy. But now I realized that my generosity had been taken for granted, viewed as obligation rather than love. If they wanted to treat me like an outsider, perhaps it was time I started acting like one. I spent the weekend researching, making phone calls, and setting my plan in motion. By Monday morning, I had everything I needed. The first call was to Tom's business loan officer. As his co-signer, I had every legal right to demand immediate full repayment. The second call was to Sarah's mortgage company. Those payments I'd been making? Time to stop. The third was to my parents' insurance company, inquiring about the claim status for their roof repair. But the real masterstroke was what I discovered about the family's Thanksgiving tradition itself. For the past 15 years, our family had held Thanksgiving dinner at the Grandview Country Club. It was Emma's favorite venue, elegant, prestigious, the kind of place where she could post Instagram photos that made her friends jealous. What my family didn't know was that I'd been the one paying for it all along. You see, my parents had mentioned years ago that the club was expensive, beyond their retirement budget. So I'd quietly arranged with the club's event coordinator to have all family gathering charges billed directly to my account. My parents thought the club was giving them some sort of loyal customer discount. Emma assumed our parents were covering it as their contribution to hosting. Nobody questioned where the money came from because nobody wanted to look too closely at a gift horse. But now I was about to take that horse away. I called Marcus Webb, the club's general manager, whom I'd worked with on numerous corporate events. "Marcus, I need to make some changes to my account," I said, keeping my voice casual. "The Harrison family account. I'll be transferring financial responsibility back to my parents, effective immediately." "Of course, Ms. Harrison. Should I give them a call to set up payment arrangements for this year's Thanksgiving reservation?" "Actually, let's make it more interesting than that. Don't call them. Just present them with the bill when they arrive. All of it. This year's event plus the outstanding balance from the past 15 years. I've been covering it all along, but they don't know that." There was a pause. "Ma'am, that's going to be quite substantial. Are you sure about this?" I thought about that group chat message, about years of being taken for granted, about standing alone while my family sided with a man who couldn't keep his hands to himself. "I'm absolutely sure." The next 2 weeks passed in a strange calm. I watched the group chat fill with excitement about the upcoming dinner. Emma posted photos of her outfit shopping. Tom shared articles about wine pairings. Sarah debated between making 2 desserts or 3. My parents chimed in occasionally, expressing gratitude for having such wonderful children who make Thanksgiving special. The irony wasn't lost on me. Meanwhile, I set the rest of my plan in motion. Tom received notice that his loan had been called in. Payment in full, required within 30 days. Sarah got a surprise when her mortgage payment was rejected for insufficient funds. My parents started receiving calls from contractors about the outstanding balance on their roof repair. I felt a twinge of guilt, but pushed it aside. They'd made their choice when they excluded me. Now they'd live with the consequences. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, my mother finally called. "Honey, we're having some confusion with bills and payments. Tom's bank called about his business loan, and Sarah's having trouble with her mortgage. Do you know anything about this?" Her tone was careful, uncertain. Part of me wanted to confess everything, to explain how I'd been quietly supporting the family for years, but a larger part of me remembered sitting alone in my office, watching my siblings plan a celebration I wasn't invited to. "That sounds stressful, Mom. Maybe you should discuss it at Thanksgiving dinner. You know, with your immediate family." The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Rachel?" she said finally. "About Thanksgiving?" "Oh, don't worry about me. I have plans." I did have plans. I'd booked myself a long weekend at a spa resort in Napa Valley. I'd be getting a massage while they were carving turkey, soaking in a mineral bath while they were making awkward small talk with Derek. But honey, you assumed wrong. Enjoy your intimate family gathering. I hung up before she could respond. Thanksgiving Day dawned crisp and clear. I was sipping champagne on a resort balcony, watching the sunrise over the vineyards when my phone started buzzing. The first call was from Emma. I let it go to voicemail. The second was from Tom. Ignored. Sarah tried next, then my father, then my mother again. Each call went unanswered, each voicemail unheard. By 2 o'clock, the calls were coming every few minutes. The group chat, which had been silent all morning, suddenly exploded with activity. "Where is Rachel? Does anyone have her hotel information? We need to talk to her now. This is a disaster." I poured myself another glass of champagne and settled in for a massage. My phone, safely tucked away in my room, could buzz all it wanted. The real fireworks started around 6 p.m. when I finally checked my messages. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and one voicemail from my father that I actually listened to. Rachel, I don't know what's going on, but we're at the country club and they're saying we owe them over $60,000. They won't serve dinner until we pay, and your mother is in tears. They said, something about an account transfer? Please call us back. This has to be some kind of mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was 15 years of Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas parties, birthday celebrations, and anniversary gatherings. It was countless hours of event planning, premium menu selections, and top-shelf bar service. It was the cost of maintaining the family's image while I quietly funded it from the shadows. The group chat had devolved into chaos. Emma, the club says Rachel has been paying for everything this whole time. Is that true? Tom, and apparently she called in my business loan. The bank wants $180,000 by Monday or they're seizing assets. Sarah, my mortgage payment was rejected. We're 3 months behind because Rachel was covering it and she stopped. Mom, I don't understand any of this. Why didn't she tell us? Dad, everyone needs to calm down. We'll figure this out. Derek, this is insane. She can't just destroy the whole family because she's having a tantrum. That last message made my blood boil. A tantrum. That's what they called standing up for what's right. I typed my response carefully. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply stopping my financial support, which you didn't know existed because you never bothered to ask where the money came from. You excluded me from Thanksgiving because I wouldn't apologize for confronting Derek's inappropriate behavior. Well, congratulations. You got your intimate family gathering. Hope you can afford it. The group chat fell silent. My phone rang immediately. Emma's name flashed on the screen. This time, I answered. Rachel, please, we can explain. Explain what? That you planned a family dinner without me and hoped I wouldn't notice? That you all decided Derek's feelings were more important than addressing his behavior? Or that you've been spending money you thought was free for 15 years without once asking where it came from? We didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. Please. The club is threatening to call security. Mom's crying, and Dad's trying to figure out how to pay a $60,000 bill on his credit card. We'll invite you to Christmas, I promise. We'll talk about Derek's behavior. Just please fix this. I looked out at the peaceful vineyard, at the life I'd built for myself through hard work and sacrifice. A life that had been taken for granted by people who should have valued it most. Emma, I've spent years fixing things for this family. Fixing Tom's financial mistakes, fixing Sarah's housing crisis, fixing Mom and Dad's home repairs. I've been fixing and giving and supporting while asking for nothing in return, except to be treated like family. You are family. No, I was an ATM with a family resemblance. There's a difference. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I could hear the commotion in the background. My mother's tears, Derek's angry voice, the club staff's patient but firm explanations about payment policies. What do you want? Emma asked finally. I want you to figure it out yourselves. You're all adults. You all have jobs and bank accounts and the same 24 hours in a day that I have. Figure out how to pay your own bills, fund your own celebrations, and solve your own problems. But the family excluded me, remember? This is what you wanted. Independence, intimacy, just the people who matter. I hung up. Over the next hour, the calls and messages continued. Tom offered to apologize. Sarah promised to pay back every cent I'd covered. My parents begged me to reconsider, saying they'd had no idea about the extent of my financial support. Derek, predictably, sent a series of increasingly hostile messages calling me vindictive, cruel, and unstable. I screenshot those and saved them, just in case. But it was the message from my youngest brother, Jake, that gave me pause. Jake was 26, fresh out of graduate school, and the only family member who'd never asked me for financial help. Rachel, I wasn't part of the Thanksgiving planning because I've been traveling for work. I just heard what happened from Mom. I had no idea you'd been supporting everyone, and I'm sorry you were excluded. That was wrong. But this nuclear option is going to destroy relationships that might have been salvageable. Is this really what you want? I stared at his message for a long time. Jake had always been different from the others, more thoughtful, less willing to take shortcuts or easy answers. He was right that my response was nuclear, but he was wrong about the relationships being salvageable. I typed back, Jake, they've been taking my money for years without acknowledgement, then excluded me from the family celebration when I stood up for what was right. These relationships were already destroyed. I'm just making the destruction visible. His response came quickly. I get that you're hurt. I'd be hurt too. But you're not just withdrawing support. You're actively creating financial crises for people you love. That's not justice, Rachel. That's revenge. He was right, of course. This was revenge. Calculated, comprehensive, and devastating revenge. The question was, did I care? I thought about Tom, who'd always been charming and irresponsible, who'd probably assumed someone else would clean up his messes even as his business crumbled. I thought about Sarah, who'd learned to budget and prioritize now that her safety net was gone. I thought about my parents, who'd finally understand the true cost of the lifestyle they'd been enjoying. And I thought about Emma and Derek, sitting in that country club, finally confronting the consequences of their choices. Yeah, I decided. I could live with being the villain in their story. My phone rang again. This time it was Marcus from the country club. Miss Harrison? I wanted to give you an update. Your family has worked out a payment arrangement. They put the full amount on multiple credit cards and set up a payment plan for future events. And dinner? Served successfully, though the atmosphere was rather tense. I hope this resolution works for everyone involved. After I hung up, I found myself wondering about that tense dinner. Were they talking about me? Were they angry? Ashamed? Did they finally understand what they'd lost? Part of me felt hollow. Revenge, it turned out, was a lot like cotton candy. Satisfying in the moment, but ultimately insubstantial. But a larger part of me felt something I hadn't experienced in years: freedom. For the first time in decades, I wasn't responsible for anyone else's financial well-being. I wasn't the secret safety net, the invisible benefactor, the quiet problem solver working behind the scenes. I was just Rachel, accountable only to myself. The rest of the weekend passed peacefully. I took long walks through the vineyards, read books by the pool, and enjoyed meals without checking my phone. The calls and messages continued, but less frequently. The initial panic had settled into a new reality. They would have to figure things out without me. Sunday evening, as I packed for my flight home, Jake texted one final message. The dust is settling. Tom's talking to bankruptcy lawyers. Sarah and her husband are looking for a cheaper place to live. Mom and Dad are meeting with a financial planner. Emma's furious, but also, I think, starting to understand what she lost. Derek's the same as always, blaming everyone but himself. I still think you went nuclear, but I also think they needed to face reality. Maybe this was the only way to make that happen. I read his message twice, then typed back, maybe it was. The flight home was quiet, giving me time to think about what came next. I'd made my point, delivered my message, exacted my revenge. But where did that leave me? I'd essentially divorced my family, cutting ties as cleanly and completely as possible. There would be no more holiday celebrations, No more birthday calls. No more casual Sunday dinners. I'd traded relationships for principles and found the exchange surprisingly fair. Walking into my empty apartment Sunday night, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The constant background stress of managing other people's crises was gone. The weight of unacknowledged responsibility had lifted. For the first time in years, my life was entirely my own. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A friend request on social media from a woman named Jennifer Chen, with a message. I heard about what happened at Thanksgiving through mutual friends. I've been in a similar situation with family financial dynamics. If you ever want to talk to someone who understands, I'm here. I smiled and accepted the request. Maybe this new chapter would include new relationships, people who saw me as Rachel first, rather than as a solution to their problems. 3 months later, I learned through Jake that Tom's business had filed for bankruptcy, but that he'd found a job and was slowly rebuilding his credit. Sarah and her family had moved to a smaller house but were managing their finances independently for the first time. My parents had downsized their lifestyle but seemed happier with their simplified situation. Emma had tried to reach out twice through Jake, but I'd declined the contact. Some bridges, once burned, weren't meant to be rebuilt. Derek, apparently, was exactly the same. But that was no longer my problem. The most surprising development came 6 months after Thanksgiving, when I received a handwritten letter from my mother. Rachel, I've been thinking about what happened for months now, and I finally understand what we lost. It wasn't just your financial support, though we've certainly felt that absence. We lost you. We lost your wisdom, your strength, your quiet way of making everything work. We took you for granted for so long that we forgot you were a person with feelings and limits. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I finally see what we did wrong. You deserved better from us. I hope someday we can find a way back to being family, but I understand if that's not possible. You have every right to protect yourself from people who couldn't see your worth. I love you. Mom. I kept that letter in my desk drawer for weeks before responding. When I finally wrote back, it was brief. Mom, thank you for acknowledging what happened. I needed to hear that. I don't know what the future holds for our relationship, but I appreciate you taking the time to really understand the situation. That means something to me. Love, Rachel. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a door left slightly ajar. A year after that Thanksgiving, I'm living a different life entirely. I've built new friendships with people who appreciate my generosity without taking it for granted. I've traveled to places I'd always wanted to see, but couldn't, because I was too busy solving other people's problems. I've learned to say no without guilt, and yes, without resentment. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd handled things differently, if I'd simply spoken up about the exclusion, if I'd had a calm conversation about boundaries and expectations. Maybe there would have been a path back to family harmony. But I don't think so. Sometimes relationships need to shatter completely before anything healthy can grow in their place. Sometimes the only way to teach people your worth is to withdraw it entirely and let them experience your absence. My family learned to function without me, and I learned to thrive without their constant needs weighing me down. We're all probably better off this way, even if they don't see it yet. The bill for that lesson was $60,000 and a family relationship. For me, it was worth every penny. Because now, when people ask what I'm thankful for, I have a simple answer. The courage to choose myself when no one else would,